Good morning, Glorantha files. Welcome to Exploring Glorantha. I am JM, and with me, as always, is our Lankor My Rune Lord, Evan. Evan, it's been a while. Like we always take like the last couple of months off, or last month off in the year, and welcome to January 32nd, which is when we're recording our January episode of Exploring
Yes.
Glorantha. Very clearly, January 32nd, not February 1st. No. Well, before we get into it, I have some announcements that I would like to get through. And the first of is Evan put this in the chat. My book hasn't arrived yet, but if you would like to let people know.
Yeah. So print on demand, both hardcover and softcover, both full color. Red Moon and Warring Kingdoms is live, and I would say the books look amazing. They're very nice quality and quite hefty.
Almost
And
350 pages, like
Yeah,
346 pages, and you guys aren't making any money off of this.
no,
So
yeah. Again, you're paying cost, the printer's cost to and shipping, obviously. Um, the difference between the hardback and the softbound is, I don't know, $5 or $6. So, but some people are going to prefer one
four
or the
dollars
other.
$4 and about 60 cents.
So, it's probably worth it getting the hardback, but in any case, it does take a while for the order to get processed. It's a big book, and so it takes a while for it to get done. I haven't seen people reviewing the hard copy yet, but we did get another rating, 4 stars. So we've got 12. We have 12 ratings and 7 reviews total. All of the written reviews are 5 star, and most of the ratings are 5 star, but there are 2 4 star reviews, and I wish those people would write a review and say why it's 4 stars, because that feedback would be valuable. Anyway, if you go and download a free PDF, or decide to order the book, please leave some feedback. Love to hear from you. Anyway, so that's enough about that. How about you, JM? Any latest things
Uh,
before we get to
oh yeah,
April?
yeah. I released the first Jackals supplement of PDF, Children of Tiam. That was yesterday. It went out to all iconic patrons, and
It's terrifying.
thank you. It's being approved by Drive Through RPG. It has the most fish people with eye nipples of any Jackal supplement to date. So, don't know if that's a pro or a con, but it did require me to check, does this thing contain adult content? And in good conscience, I had to say yes. But I'm looking forward to when that goes live. I'll make a post. Osprey's going to share it around, and it's the first of 12 supplements that I'm putting out for Jackals this year. And thanks to Evan for helping playtest a lot of these. His screams of terror
Ah,
warmed warmed the cackles of my heart during.
your characters will die, but gloriously so.
Hey, only one person died in our last Jackals game, and that's because he didn't roll well enough. Now, granted, all of you had to spend a fate point, and it was only because of one player's mutual death on the monster that you had a chance of survival. But I would like to point out 75% survival rate, not bad at all. And then also, for the first time since the original Chaosium Con, both Evan and I will be at Chaosium Con this year. We had
2025.
2025. It's happening, Evan. It's happening. We should, I don't know, plan a hangout at the bar one night.
Yeah.
I mean, I will be hanging out at the bar one night, so you know.
I mean, every night, right?
Right. I
But
mean,
no.
listen, you make it sound like I have a problem. I don't. I just enjoy pub food. So,
There you go.
the we will post the outline for this episode, and my job here today is much as always as the Isseries initiate to keep keep the extensive notes that Evan has put together for this, which is a totally valuable resource for anyone running a Gloranthan game. In fact, it is worth the price of entry alone to the iconic um, patronage. I'll get that all transcribed over to PDF and shipped out to patrons later today. But when we last left off last year, the Second Age came to a rather dramatic close. And I mean that, excuse me, I mean that in a literal sense. Because the oceans closed, the great empires fell. It went from a very expansive and cosmopolitan age to at the end we had this sort of great collapse, sort of reminiscent of the Bronze Age collapse, right around 1144, where you had this very cosmopolitan Mediterranean trade going between the Hittites and the Greeks and the Egyptians and those in the Levant, and then it all just collapsed like a flan in the cupboard. And that's what we have going on right now. Also, hey, good morning to Praetorian Panzer and to Tinker Hellraiser. I think I'm familiar a little bit with Tinker Hellraiser. I mean, Evan was very excited to see you, so
And Praetorian.
and Praetorian. Always good to see Praetorian. So the oceans are closed. Peloria is just completely devastated because of the fallout of the Dragon Kill War. There are no humans in Dragon Pass. And there will not be humans in Dragon Pass for a while. Pavis has been sacked and is in ruin. I mean, the center has fallen completely apart, and most importantly, there are several great works of magic that have really isolated the people of Glorantha, not just ocean-wise, but even throughout the continent. So, Evan, I know we're gonna. So, this will be an episode where we will cross reference with several other episodes that we've done. So, if you want to know more about what the Lunars are doing in this time frame, uh, go check out our Lunar episode, because at this point we have the Seven Mothers going out on their hero quest, and they are bringing the Red Goddess into the world. That leads to the conquest of Peloria, right? Yes,
Yes.
haha,
Yes.
and sets up the stage for our current Gloranthan games. So we're not going to focus as much on that for multiple reasons. One, we've done that before. Two, Evan has put together a gorgeous tome of Red Moon lore for you to peruse for free. Remember, the PDF is for free. And also because Evan wants to keep my blood pressure down, and it's just I can't the Lunars. So Evan, highlights of what the Lunars are doing.
Yeah.
And then we'll get into some other things that are setting the stage for the Third Age.
Sure. So, the close of the Second Age, it's there's sort of a period, but it really is punctuated by the Dragon Kill War in 1120, wiping out all human beings in Dragon Pass. And the devastated lands of Peloria, even though the dragons didn't get there, and very few people came back, and so there was a lot of hardship. Carmania, that we've talked about a little bit, expands under the Bolshahs into ruling Peloria. And so there's this realignment happening sort of in the first century after the Dragon Kill War. No humans are filtering into Dragon Pass because uh, there are these two there are these two lines that sort of demarcate, beyond this line you will die, and there's the death line and there's the cross line, and nobody is going across them, or
Mm-hmm.
nobody's going across them and living to tell the tale. So Peloria is sort of pushed, kept out of the pass, and instead interacting with its neighbors, getting conquered, and the Bolshahs of Armenia are quite oppressive to the conquered populations. So there is formed about a century after the Dragonkill War this conspiracy led by a woman named Dezola, who is a queen, a regional queen, and she gathers a group of sort of outlawed, oddball individuals,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like an adventuring party in some ways, um, to try and change the fortunes of uh, their respective regions, countries, peoples. Um, and these people become known as the Seven Mothers. But initially they're just a group of conspirators. Dezola, Eripiantor, who is the a disciple of Lankormai, and Busarian, who are really the same entity, but examined through different lenses. Yanifal Charnels, who is a great warrior. Jackaleel, who is a darkness witch, and it's long enough ago that we're not 100% sure exactly what entities she was involved with. Was it Xeroxaran? Was it other darkness entities? But she knows, the depths of horrors of the hells. Then a prisoner, Dan Five Zarin, who is may have been like a storm worshiper or something. He's but they basically bring him in and say, uh, we will we will let you participate, and through your suffering, you'll be able to sort of earn your place. And then they grab an innocent off the street that they need as part of the ritual and the sacrifice. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's some entity that they are named. So the innocent is Tilo Nori, yet a girl um, that they really grab to be the vessel for the entity that they hope to contact through their ritual. And then they have the patronage or involvement. Again, there are deep mysteries here of someone they call simply She Who Waits. They uh, Now we have seven, which is, we've suggested before, it is very akin to the Lightbringer's Quest.
Mm-hmm.
It is almost as if they have modified the Lightbringer's Quest to go and, like Orlanth, to go and get what is needed to restore order to the universe. But in this case, they want to sort of restore order. They want to change what is going on for them in the world of time, in Peloria. And through their quest, they reassemble the pieces of the lost moon goddess,
Mm-hmm.
and they return with her. She inhabits the body of Tilo Nori, and it becomes initially known as Tilo Astara. And and this is not, they begin in secret, but they end in, there is an enormous sort of spiritual magical signal that suddenly everybody knows something just happened
Right.
in this city of Torang, and thus begins then the sort of conversion of, there is, unlike many religions in Glorantha, the uh, the Lunars are missionary. They want to bring the good news of the success of their their ritual and the return of a lost immortal. Um, and they go through many battles, some with setbacks. Ultimately, Tilo Astara uh, leads them, and then goes on her own hero quest, or
Hmm.
what it was really called, a god quest, and she's gone for years. At one point is thought to be lost, and Janfal Tarnals and Dan5 Sarin have to go to the other side to help bring her back. So I think another thing that we've learned, I didn't put it in the notes, but our hero questing discussion, even though you may be portraying, there may be a god that is mentioned in doing things, but always the god or goddess has assistants, has
Hmm.
helpers, has there's some who say that that Humacht in some ways was really on the Lightbringer's quest because Orlanth had his sword. His sword, he wielded death against Yelm. Humacht is not just a separate entity, but Humacht is also the death power that Orlanth wielded on the quest. Um, so was so we know that that she didn't accomplish all everything alone, but she does manage to come back during a critical battle, um, which um, then um, allows her to turn the tide there, fighting the Carmanians,
Hmm.
and she returns again not alone, but having found this incredible chaos demon, the Crimson Bat, who she tames as her steed, and she rides back into the world of time in
She
what becomes
she.
known
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
as the first Battle of Chaos.
Well, I was going to say it's also known as meatloafing, where you
There we
ride
go.
the bat
Out of hell.
out of hell. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And then kind of the two big endpoints here to kind of set the stage for the start of the Third Age is obviously the Battle of Castle Blue, where
Mhm.
the old gods show up to
Right.
lay waste to this chaos wielding abomination, and
Right.
it lasts a year.
So,
And yeah, and in the end, they have to accept that the Red Goddess has a place in time.
that's right.
Although, like any of these moments of apotheosis or interference from the god time, they are marked by dreadful signs and portents, and there is a reason why the Sartorites still to this day, uh, hate the red goddess. Now you mentioned that the lunars are uh, have a very missionarial focus. It reminds me a lot of what we saw in the first age with the first council, what we saw in the second age with the spreading of the two empires. Like there are these beats that keep getting recapitulated, and Greg even notes this in the King of Dragon Pass, um, or the Prince of Sartar book, right? That
There's so many. The book is King of
the
Sartar.
book is King of
The
Sartar
web comic
is
is Prince of
Sartar.
Sartar,
Yes, the
and
king
the computer game
is
is King
King
of
of
Dragon
Dragon Pass.
Pass.
Yes. So the King of Dragon Pass, the King of Sartar
Sartar.
book, he talks about how the devil comes back cyclically, about every 4 or 5 to 600 years, and that the conceit of the book is that it's being written in the fourth age, talking about the events that happened in the third age, and the writer is concerned that they have lost so much that they will not be ready when these recapitulations, these mythic resonances, kind of rise again at the end of the fourth age. And then we have the great apotheosis, where the red goddess scoops out um, a chunk of Peloria and takes it and sets it in the sky. And that's the thing to remember. This is Glorantha. So the moon doesn't orbit Glorantha. It sits in the sky,
And
rotating.
yeah, or something. It's again, it's a bit of a mystery. Is there a shadow that crosses
Right.
around it? And and uh, Sandy Peterson mentioned that he suggested to Greg that actually the cycle of life and death is moving across the face of the moon, and the part of it is dying and part of it is being reborn. And Greg said, oh, that's great, and all of it is true,
Right.
again,
That's the wonderful
as
thing
with.
about Glorantha.
And so, but yes, it is fixed. It does not rise or set. It is visible, but it isn't at a place in the sky, of course, because of the incredible uh, uh, energies of its deity. It has resonance into the hero plane and into the spirit plane, as well as in the physical world. Um, and um, the this apotheosis and the rising of the moon is at the end of what the lunars call the zero wane.
Mm-hmm.
This is everything that leads up to the ascension of the goddess. Um, and then the first wane opens with her son, the Red Emperor, sort of consolidating power over. They defeated the Carmanians. They've absorbed uh, its territory, and then um, to spread the faith, they become a territorially expansive empire.
Mm-hmm. So, if you want more information, please go check out the lunar episode or the show notes if you are a member of the Iconic Patronage. Now we're going to come to possibly my favorite person in all of the lore of Glorantha. Belantar the Stranger, later Belantar the God King, briefly known as Belantar the Pharaoh. Um, Belantar is this mysterious figure. We don't know where he came from. We don't know where he originated, why he showed up. All we know is that he came from another time and place. He fell into the sea of time, is what he said, while he was failing at hero questing and washed up ashore in 1313. And Belantar goes on to establish the Tournament of Luck and Death, all of these great things that are so key and vital to the Third Age. And he starts it off like kind of with a bang. And that's right, good old Pharaoh. He deposes the only, he says he has come to depose the only old one and liberate the Shadowlands, which is, as we talked about in the Second Age, it's, the only old one is this trollish affiliated ruler of the Shadowlands. And Belantar goes on to found his kingdom. And what's interesting to me about this is a resonance that we see many times through mythologies. This warrior this priest that sort of comes out of nowhere. We don't know the origins of this person. They have some tie to the supernatural that we are unable to explain based off of our current knowledge of the world. And they interact with the world in a very profound and mysterious way. In Arthur, very a lot of the versions of Arthur, this is Merlin. I mean, but it goes as far back as Melchizedek showing up in the middle of Abraham's story in Genesis. He's a priest of God and a king of Salem. Okay, but we don't know anything else about him, and he shows up and has this moment of impact. It's what I love. Like Belantar very early on grabbed my attention. So Evan.
Yeah, he's the stranger king that somehow it literally walks out of the sea that is
That is
closed,
closed at this point.
that no
He
one
comes.
can voyage across.
Yeah.
Right. and filled with sea monsters, and that, and death, and no one can go out farther than a little bit out to just do near shore fishing and things. um so yeah, so um he sets himself against the only old one, who is sort of this surviving power, who lived before time,
Mm-hmm.
who is the son of Arganagar, who
Yep.
participated in, was featured during the Lightbringer quest, and who has been, who is both a protector, but also an oppressor at times. But he
Mm-hmm.
has been a survivor above all. Survived the God time, survived the first age, survived the second age, and suddenly this person, this stranger, this nobody, walks out of the sea and says, "I've come to take what's yours and to
And
set a new order."
and he does.
And he does.
He does. He destroys the castle of black glass to the point that the Shadow Plateau is covered in this dense black sand that is the remnants of it. He is killed at least one point and dealt with, and this becomes a reoccurring theme with Valentar, that he comes back.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he and we see this with heroes. Of course, Arcot
hmm
comes back, but he has help somehow. Belantar, it's unclear in the stories that we have so far exactly how Belantar, cheated death and made a heroic return. But the heroic return is the recurring theme.
It really is. And then he goes on to found the Holy Country. And then,
Yeah.
as I said, establishes the Tournament of the Masters of Luck and Death, because uh, Belantar uses up his body and then hold this tournament, and the winner of the tournament gets to be the new vessel for Belantar. And congratulations. And that continues throughout the Third Age. He said,
Well,
"Hold on, we got a comment that he is like the embodiment of the sea peoples arriving out of nowhere from our Bronze Age." Yeah, there's I like that parallel as well. It also always amuses me where they're like, history is written by the victors, unless you're the sea peoples. Then you just come out and destroy all written record of yourself and disappear into the tides of history.
um, well, and it's this idea of the divine
Mm-hmm.
brought to earth. So he ascends, he through, he transcends being a hero, and becomes the God King, a god on earth, not unlike something that just happened about a century before with the Red Goddess. And again, this idea of the vessel,
Mm-hmm.
she came to earth. She's Her vessel is Tilo Nori. His We don't know. Did he have, did he arrive in his own body, or had he been doing this for a while? We
Right, we
we
don't.
just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But he establishes this ritual to for the best and the brightest to compete, um, and then their spirit goes on to a reward, and he inhabits the body. And this is something that later on we see that the Red Emperor does as
Okay.
well, that he is uh, eventually his mortal body, even though he makes several heroic returns, eventually it can't sustain his divine power on Earth, and he has to jump bodies every once in a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
But this, there is sort of this unparalleled um, period suddenly of spiritual harmony and unity and prosperity and peace that Belantar brings out of this incredible conflict that he has with the representative of the past.
Yeah.
um, and he establishes this new order. And Jeff calls the what comes known as the Holy Country, that there is this proximate divine realm, that heaven is particularly close in some way, the barrier between worlds, is thin in this area, and so Belantar becomes a channel for all of the impressive spiritual power
Hmm.
to be shared out. And he does, he creates incredible wonders, including what is called the City of Wonders, which is his new capital. Um, and so it's this transformative thing. So on one end of Dragon Pass, you have the Lunar Empire developing with this, innovation. Like the first century had been like rejecting innovation,
Right.
had been we saw what happened with the God Learners and the Empire of Worm's friends, and messing with new things only brings horrible destruction. Um, and so, it's back to basics, and then suddenly people are rediscovering and innovating like
Hmm.
crazy. Um, and the changes are causing pressures on the populations on both ends of Dragon Pass.
Right. Which leads to right around the same time, uh, the go and see episode 24 if you want to know more about the Gracelanders. But the Gracelanders, they're defeated by Jaldan Goldentooth, and they retreat into Dragon Pass. And about 50 years later, Kolimar, with other refugees from Hjortland, also cross into Dragon Pass. And if the name Kolimar sounds familiar, one of the great tribes of the Sartorites and kind of the foundation figure of Sartorite mythology. We also see Aram the Pauper come in and establish what would become as Tarsh. Now, let me ask Evan for Praetorian Panzer, who's in the chat and says he loves it when we get to dive into lore about something he knows nothing about. Do we know why Haunted Dragon Pass suddenly became habitable for humanity, or is that one of the great mysteries?
It is a mystery. It so there's sort of these three that there's the north and south, there's the cross line and the death line. And, Aram crosses one, Colomar crosses the other. They're with great trepidation. And because, Aram and it was fleeing the expansion of the Lunar Empire
Mm-hmm.
and Huaran Dalthippa, the great road building, conquering daughter, had entered into the lands where he and his people were, and so some of them were, rather than submit, were seeking other opportunities. Similarly, Colomar and his people
Mm-hmm.
had resisted the transformation of and acquisition of their lands to be placed into the holy country, the Belantar's kingdom. And so they are motivated to go. They are terrified, and yet they come across, and nothing happens. And um, it could just be that there was a cycle of of the um, of the power that had happened, that the horrible destruction wrought by the dragons, and that after a couple of centuries they had become quiescent.
Yeah,
But
went
it's
back to
not entirely
sleep,
clear.
or yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And for the Gracelanders, so they don't cross those lines because
Right.
they come from Prax into into the pass, again fleeing
Mm-hmm.
for their lives, and they are welcomed by the beast people, particularly by Ironhoof, the king centaur, um, and he sees in them um, a kinship because of their ties to horses. And there's a lot of unusual stories about their links to the centaurs and things of that nature. But anyway, but it's funny, the of course there's the Tarshites and the Sartorites are more dominant. The Gracelanders are important, but they're sort of more insular and regionally connected, whereas Tarsh and Sartar are are connected to the wider world, and their stories of like, hey, we were brave and we went into Dragon Pass and we resettled it. Like the Gracelanders were there first, but
Yeah.
but it's usually like the resettlement of Dragon Pass, Kolimar. It's like so they are somehow a little different because of their ties to their beasts, and they're welcomed by the beast people. But in any case, there's sort of a century or so of the pass opening up and then suddenly being transformed by the repopulation by human groups.
All right, so let's set up the last main figure that we need to talk about here at the start. Personally, my favorite stories out of the Lunar Empire tend to revolve around this guy. Uh, Evan, as our resident lunar scholar here, let's delve into Shang Celeris, the Lunar Nightmare.
May his name ever be cursed. Um,
I mean, you know,
uh, so
one man's
the
nightmare is another man's folk hero.
uh, yeah. Well, we'll see how that all works out, won't we? As we talk about the Third Age.
Just
But
just remember, Evan helps prepare the outlines, and Evan is very pro lunar propaganda.
reality is pro-lunar propaganda. So at the same time that the Red Goddess is reborn and the Moon Goddess comes back to the world, not unlike
Yes.
the parallels of Arcat and Nisalor, a a a person named Argatu Se is born among omens in Pent. So this is um, in 1220, and but so what is Pent? Pent is a great is a great grassland, the steppe of northern Genertella, and the um, the the individuals who had been the rulers of Peloria, but who had been these horse people who had been pushed out um, in the First Age with the restoration of Pelorian Dara Happen sun worshippers. So they are sun worshippers too, but you have sort of the city oriented culture became ascendant. They pushed the horse riders out. They are more nomad oriented. The pure horse people only had horses, but many of them had uh, undergone a culture change where they herded cattle and rode horses. So they're linked to the Gracelanders in origin, um, and they have they had always been raiders upon the various the settled lands of Peloria, but they had many competing tribes and clans, and very rarely had someone to unite them. These are analogous people, but different, in their own Gloranthan way. But we could think about the Huns, we could think about the Mongols. There's a pre-Hun people mentioned in the Chinese chronicles whose name escapes me, but there's a continuity of
Mhm.
basically they're the people who ride horses on the steppe. They're terrifying, and if they ever get united, they just sweep over the land.
The Scythians.
The Scythians,
Yeah.
exactly, Sarmatians,
Yeah.
all these Hungarians, right? The
Yeah.
Magyars, again, the steppe kinds of people um, who have this high mobility, and a certain contempt for the settled lands, but are ready um, to invade and raid and take things. Um, so this Argatusei develops into a powerful leader, probably a shaman warrior. Um, and he first turns his attention to away from Peloria and to the other great empire that we're not talking a lot about because they're peripheral to central Ganartella, but they are exceptionally important. It's just that they are not well defined yet in our published materials. But Krallarella, and he challenges the Dragon Emperor. He demands that the Dragon Emperor come forward and face him in battle, and the Emperor sends a subordinate, and this nomad magician gets defeated, and he is enslaved in Krallarella for a century.
Yeah.
But then he's freed, and he performs miracles, and he renames himself, or is renamed. It's not entirely clear, but a century later, he is now Shang Celeris, and he returns to Pent. Um, and he begins to unite the tribes, and he begins to terrorize their neighbors, and he forces the submission of the Praxian beast
Mm-hmm.
riders. Now he doesn't like drag them up to Pent and carry them around, but like anytime he needs them, they have submitted to him, and they are required to ride with him, which is horrific to them because they hate horse riders. um they are the ones who they crushed the
Right.
Grazelanders, the pure horse people who had been living in for several centuries in Prax, and expelled their survivors into Dragon Pass, where they thought they would all die. But then they are conquered by Shang, and um, Shang tries to invade Krallarella again. Um, he is defeated by the Dragon Emperor Gaduya, and but he plunders a great deal of Krallarella. And the things that are recorded is that there was an agreement. He lost. He was supposed to leave, but he left and he plundered everything, which was not in the agreement. Shang does this a lot.
Shane. Yes.
He liberally interprets the sorts of rules that he agrees to fight in, and he is able to avoid any sort of punishment for that. So, with all of this vast wealth that he's plundered from the East, he then uh, enters Peloria and starts to crush lunar opposition. And he understands the lunar cycle,
Mm-hmm.
and with the mobility of his army, is able to almost always come at them when they're weakest.
Right. And he also pronounces this dread curse that appears to slay the first appears to slay the Red Emperor.
Right. Early on, he and now speaking of curses, the Dragon Emperor also issued a curse against Shang Celeris, but it was like um, I forget the exact term, but it's uh, it's basically curse now, pay later. The curse is coming. It's going to leap out at some point. Um, but it's not bothering Shang right now. He appears to kill the Red Emperor, um, and uh, and Shang is starting a long period of time where he and his war bands basically ride with little opposition across the Lunar
Mm-hmm.
Empire.
And then he
Um,
does actually, at another confrontation, almost 25 years later, actually kill the Red Emperor, who
right,
then
right,
returns as sort of this guerrilla fighter, much in the way that we were talking about Belantar. But what's
yeah,
interesting is a lot of the things that we kind of associate with the Third Age Lunar Empire, things like the glow line, the return, the cyclical reincarnation of the Red Emperor, the ascension and apotheosis of the Red Emperor's daughters to the pantheon of the Lunars, a lot of these are established here in this time of conflict, actually in response to
Right.
the actions, dare I say, the aggressions of Shang Celeris.
Yeah. The depredations. And he is
I don't know. I don't get
incredibly
that. No.
he's incredibly successful. The empire suffers terribly. It's like the emperor is killed, he gets better, comes back, gets killed again, gets better, but
Ish. Yeah.
yeah, ish, right? But has to it is basically, you know, emperor in name, but the rulers are really Sheng and his subordinates, who are looting the empire, and up to uh, and including attacking the moon
Yeah.
twice.
Yeah. We
Twice they ride to the moon. The second time leaving horrible scars, looking for the emperor's soul to try and end him,
right.
because Shang does know that the red emperor is dangerous to him.
Uh, One of the people in the chat was referred to Shang as his their favorite Penton astronaut,
That's right.
and wanted to know if the Jian Yu were the people you were speaking of.
I think
From
so.
okay,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
excellent.
Um,
Enjoy some inspiration
yes.
in your Glorantha game.
Yeah. I saw someone once refer to Shang Celeris as Genghis Khan murder astronaut. Um,
That's the name of my new death metal band.
That's right. But Genghis Khan is not exactly, I mean, broadly, that is a great nomad leader, uniting the tribes either through inspiration or through conquest to then sweep over the land. Yes, that's Shang, but the tactics and his personality and everything is very different. And of course, we're like Shang is uh getting to be almost 2 centuries old. He is a Gloranthan hero who has immense magical vitality, and through experience and questing and suffering has transformed himself into this god on earth. Again, he a star appears tied to him, and he becomes apotheosized as well. But he doesn't go. The Red Goddess eventually goes to the God Time. She retreats from the
Mm-hmm.
world. The Red Emperor, no. Shang Celeris, no. Belantar, no. They stay engaged with the world. Um, I'm not sure if Shang is body hopping or not, or if his power is such that he's not using up his body. His magic is different. This combination of uh, of celestial power. Again, he's a sun worshiper. Like it, his god is a kind of a version of Yelm,
Mm-hmm.
but one that is terrifying to the Pelorian Dara Happen Yelm worshippers. And he has learned from the Dragon Empire. He has learned
Mm-hmm.
all sorts of incredible secrets and powers.
Well, and the
And
oh, go ahead. Sorry, Evan.
I should say
Yep.
one other thing. After the conquest of the Lunar Empire, he then goes and does conquer the Dragon Empire. He drives the Dragon Emperor into hiding, much as the Red Emperor has to. Now, the Red Emperor is on his back heels longer than the Dragon Emperor is, um, but Sheng's short-lived but incredible empire, basically unites, uh, Pent, Peloria, and Crowlerella in one vast political entity.
Yeah. Now, he is eventually defeated and killed by the Red Emperor in his third incarnation, but he is not killed. He is trapped in a lunar hell, uh, which may be the when the Red Emperor disappeared the first time due to the curse. He was looking for a place that even Shang Celeris would fear. Could be the hell that he's trapped in, but he has left this indelible mark on the psyche of the Lunars, and all Lunars have nightmares about Shang Celeris returning from hell. This is akin to Rome having nightmares about Hannibal, or the what happened at the Teutoburg Forest. This is a terrible, Attila the Hun living on in the nightmares of Europe. This is akin to. I mean, he takes on an even more mythical nature, if you will, after his death and entrapment in lunar hell. And as we know in Glorantha, belief and mythology help. Well, they have power.
Yeah, despite his defeat and being trapped, and some of the defeat is by some quarters is attributed to the Dragon Emperor's curse that also sort of contributed, like set him up for a magical sucker punch from the Red Emperor. But whatever happened, he could not be extinguished.
Right.
And so the idea is, much like killing Belantar, it's like, oh, or killing the Red Emperor, like they keep coming back. Okay, so we need to imprison him, much as Arcat was imprisoned.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is when you imprison someone, they do live on, and someone could either they could figure out how to get out themselves, being demigod heroes, or or someone might go and get them out. And so this is, the nightmares are real. This is you got the tiger by the tail. um, and uh, and the dreams of the Pentons are tied to Shang Celeris. Like Shang Celeris will return. He's their King Arthur. Like
Yeah,
he will return and lead us to victory, and we will sweep the our enemies from the field. And hear the lamentation of the women. Um,
that's right. King Arthur Conan.
yeah.
Um, David said it's a pity he failed. He could have destroyed the Third Age rather than Argrath. All right, so
Well,
what does this mean for our games in Glorantha? And I think we've touched upon it already. That the thing to keep in mind as we're going through this, and I realize for a intro level to Glorantha um, show, having 15 episodes on the three ages, we may not be condensing our course material as well as we had initially hoped. But we see these mythic recapitulations. We see these cycles that happen. And the thing to remember is these cycles will keep happening, especially as the King of Sartar book kind of implies. And so, as we are here playing here on the cusp of the Hero Wars in RuneQuest, Glorantha, or in the middle of the Hero Wars in 13th Age Glorantha, looking back to the end of the first and second ages and what was tried to be accomplished over those ages is really the main takeaway here, right? Old powers in new ways, as Evan quite nicely outlined here and mentioned earlier, right? The Red Goddess quest is a variant of Orlanth's Hero Quest. We have this reattempt to establish the golden or the green age of Glorantha in three different ways: the Lunar Empire, trying to set up the Red Goddess's domain, Shang Celeris and the Celestial Empire, and then the Holy Country with Belantar. Uh, Evan, I mean, if you want to speak on reincarnation and kind of the parallels between um, the Red Goddess and Shang Celeris and Nicelor and Arcat. I mean, because those are very clear parallels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's yeah, there's this uh recurrent theme of, the polar opposites being, linked and appearing at the same time, um, and that they're on an inevitable collision course. And it's interesting too, well, so the idea of, each power having its shadow,
Mm-hmm.
and there being sort of a difficulty in seeing, you can't, uh, you, uh, it's hard for you to see into your own shadow, and so to perceive the threat and to fight it, and that you're tied, you can never escape it, right? It's always with you. um, uh, but there's sort of an interesting parallel to Harmast also had a shadow in the first stage. Harmast, the great Orlanthi hero, um, um, the Iron Vrock, or the was his, but he, in the end, he didn't even um, uh, fight him. He was killed by someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So it does not necessarily mean that you are destined for the giant boss fight between the two of you. I mean, Nicelor and Arcat, yes. Um, Shang Celeris and the Red Goddess, they are opposites, and they will play through proxies. But there may be other players on the
Mm-hmm.
board. Again, this is something old, but it's happening in a new way in the third age. And then, sort of body jumping things. I don't recall seeing very much of that in earlier ages. I mean, it could be that the God learners experimented with
Right.
that. Certainly, someone like Delecti, who played multiple teams.
Yeah.
He may have started as a God learner and then got involved with the Empire of Worms Friends, and then transformed himself into an undead monster to avoid being coded as human and being eaten by the dragons, because he stayed around
Right.
in expanding, his swamp, during the period of inhuman occupation in that. And so, he may have pioneered sort of a version, a very, corrupt, moving not from a living vessel to a living vessel, but from his undead vessel to, a newly killed, vessel. So a kind of a perverted inversion of this, of rather than having like a willing um, person to take it on. But it's these powers are being expanded and explored. I mean, the Red Emperor is, as the Lunar Empire goes along, is burning
Mm-hmm.
through bodies, within decades. Um, and it's unclear from, I don't think we have the full record of how many hosts Belantar went through. Um, and then, he doesn't make it to the end of the third age. He
No.
makes it into, sort of the real cascade of, and we'll talk about that in the next episode, and maybe the episode after that, that leads us into the start of the Hero Wars. But he sort of helps set the scene, but then he's this amazing and interesting character, sort of ushered off stage,
Yeah.
for others to take his place. And, much like, sort of the only old one, who was like, oh, he was really important. We're looking at this in a series, and it's like, oh, the only old one plays a pivotal role, like in in God time, in the first
Yep.
age, in the second age. And then, there was sort of a sense of permanence about him. And then it's like, oh, nope. And now he's done.
Yeah.
Like early third age, whoop, he is off. Now, I mean, he is an immortal in some ways, would it be possible for him to come back? Well, your Glorantha may vary. Maybe your characters, if Belantar is gone, like, oh, but maybe we need the old one back. He was a for stability. Certainly possible, but he seems, completely off stage, and having gone on to his demigod's reward. But it's Glorantha. Anything can
Yeah.
happen. Like having a goddess within time that decides, to be a to operate within time, seemingly as a footnote exception to the Great Compromise. And of course, there's this sense of, well, that's going to let the devil in. That's going to
Well, I mean,
bring chaos back. Um,
there is some pretty compelling evidence that is.
that may be overblown.
Well, we'll pick up later in next month in February because obviously
Right. This is the 32nd.
this is the 32nd of January. Later, in the month of February, we will come back. We'll do part 2 of the Third Age. But as always, Evan, I thoroughly enjoy hanging out and just talking Glorantha with you. It is the highlight of my month. Thank you so much for all the work you put in prepping the outlines. We've got some cool. We've got 2 to 3 more episodes on our chronological look of Glorantha, and then we're going to delve into we've had some requests to look at different rules, uh, the way magic works in like RuneQuest Glorantha. And we, being exploring Glorantha, don't just want to do a rules review, but we're going to look at like how does spirit magic work, but what does that mean narratively, and what does it mean to have it pervade your life in Glorantha? So we may look at some of the mechanical aspects of how spirit and rune magic and sorcery and shamanism work, but also the goal will always be to tie it back for how is this inspiration for players and GMs, and how does this type of magic fit into the world that we love. So, any final thoughts before we wrap up here, Evan?
uh, we're bringing the timeline up to where you're playing, and hopefully we're going to make the setting come even more alive and be more exciting and spark more creative ideas for you to bring to your table. And we're excited by it, and we hope you will be too.
Yeah. And yes, we would love to explore hero questing rules at some point in the future. So, till next time, thank you all. This has been Exploring Glorantha. I am JM, always with my estimable co-host, Evan, and we will see you all in a month for more Exploring Glorantha. Till then, everybody, have a good one.
We are all us.